Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Bruin Dash, the UCLA football and basketball show on Dash Sports TV. My name is Sam Connon. I'm one of your hosts, as usual, joined by my co-host Jack Perez. Jack, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sam. We're fully into midterms here at UCLA for this winter quarter, and it's going great so far. Nothing to complain about.
Not at all. I hope your long weekend. You stayed busy.
Yeah, I had a couple things to do, but mostly watching UCLA basketball for parts of it.
It's not a bad way to fill your time, even though there's some pretty frustrating games in there, pretty games that are tough to watch, but they're games, they're competitive, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. UCLA men's basketball. They had a narrow loss in Pullman after looking like they were going to get blown out, and then they get a narrow win in Seattle against Washington. So a split on the road over the weekend, and then coming up, the Arizona schools at home, who UCLA swept on in Arizona earlier this season. Johnny Juzang is a big part of how UCLA avoided an 0-2 weekend at 25, 28 points in these two games. He was really just on a hot streak. We'll be talking about him, what he needs to do for this team, and what this team needs from him. So we'll be breaking down Juzang, the Washington games, the upcoming Arizona games, and everything UCLA basketball that is on our minds. It's in the news right now. So if you have any thoughts, comments, questions, whatever it is, leave them in the comments below. If you're watching live, we will get to them, and please join in if you want to. So without further ado, let's get on to the first topic. The two Washington games, the Washington State loss, the Washington win. A lot of room for improvement in both games, I will say, but a road split in conference play is good enough, from my perspective, but obviously a lot of holes. What do you think the Bruins need to do to kind of flip a split into a 2-0 weekend, Jack?
Well, first thing is UCLA has defended home court well. Even with no fans, they seem like they're comfortable in that environment. It seems like Pauley Pavilion is a place where they belong and that they feel comfortable playing in, feel confident there. Obviously, getting a guy like Jalen Hill back, who's been out for personal reasons, will continue to be out, is a big thing. You just don't have a direct replacement for him in the lineup. You got Kenny and Mac as the backup bigs, but one of them has barely played at all this season. The other was in high school less than a couple months ago and is now playing against Pac-12 guys over and over again. That's a rough transition. So you're not really going to be able to just have a direct replacement for him. The biggest thing that the Bruins could do is just to start to make their free throws more often. I mean, we've seen it a couple times, even in their wins. Against Washington, they were 6 of 18 from the line. That included a miss right at the end where they allowed Washington to grab a defensive rebound and chuck up a Hail Mary. They missed to not send it to overtime, but just making those free throws, they were called free throws for a reason. Going 3 of 8 against USC, not only did they not get to the line, but when they got to the line, they weren't converting. If you're a Power 5 team shooting under 75%, 70% from free throws in a game, you're doing something wrong. And I get it. They're tiring as the game goes on. Guys like Jaime Jaquez, when he went 0 for 3 in the Washington game, and it looked like there were times he was just getting battered down there. That's it's understandable for you to have a bad game once in a while, but to have this over and over, even in the Arizona State win earlier this year, they had to go to overtime because they weren't making their free throws. They were 14 of 24 from the free throw line that game. Make one of those in regulation, and you don't have to go to overtime. I mean, it's such a simple thing for them to fix and to work on. And even with Jalen Hill, who's one of the worst free throw shooters on the team out, they're still not hitting them. So I mean, at some point, Mick Cronin's got to really identify that. Maybe you make them shoot 1,000 free throws in practice, each of them, something to fix them from the line.
Yeah, the line is definitely an issue and has been as of late. But it's interesting, though, because you look at their first 4 or 5 games of the season, the loss to San Diego State, the triple overtime game against Pepperdine when, Jaime Jaquez, again, was just abysmal from the free throw line. And then the Cal game, which they won pretty handily, it still barely shot over 50%. But so their first 4 games, they shot a combined 66% from the free throw line. These past 3 games, the USC game and the 2 Washington games, they're shooting 51%, so even worse than that. But the weird thing is that all those games in between, they're shooting about 78, 79%, which is good. That's above average. That's what you want from your team. So I don't know if they're just in a funk, if there's something mental. like you said, that's around when Jalen Hill goes out. Maybe we're not sure what his personal reasons for not being with the team are, but him not being there, how that affects the team mentality. If other guys are experiencing similar things, we're not really sure. But it is weird to see that early season struggles pop back up after they had been having such a strong stretch at the free throw line.
Yeah, and I think if you really want to point out another thing, while they did play well after Chris Smith went out, he had the ACL tear pretty early into Pac-12 play. They adjusted well from that, but it still seems like they don't have that go-to guy. We're going to talk about Johnny Juzang a little bit later, but he's on and off at times. He relies a lot on his three-point shot. He relies a lot on creating his own shot at times, and that's great. But he's not a guy that can just drive down the lane and just hit it every single time. We've seen at times Tiger Campbell has done that. We've seen at times Jules Bernard has done that. These guys all have the ability to, but they're not consistent in it. And that's where I'm looking at a guy like Jaime Jaquez Jr., who going into this year, looked like he might sneak into the first team all Pac-12. And then when Chris Smith went down, was really the guy that everyone was talking about being the next guy up, the next person to lead this team. Over the weekend, he wasn't seeming like that. Against Washington State, he struggled quite a bit. And at Washington, you thought he might get going. His very first shot of the game was the three-pointer, went in. He didn't attempt a single field goal after that. Well, a single field goal where he didn't get fouled after that. That's just not good enough from a guy like that. Yes, he's doing everything else around there. He's making some good passes, getting a lot of rebounds, but he needs to really take control of these games. Mick Cronin needs to trust Jaime Jaquez to really take over and lead this Bruins squad.
I don't want to say he is an issue, but his play has been poor, and it's hurt the team because against Washington, he took one shot. He made it, but you took one shot. He had been the team's leading scorer for the majority of the season between when Chris Smith went out and when Johnny Juzang started taking over these past few games. He's averaging 6.5 points per game going back to the Oregon State game, these last 4 games. He hasn't cracked double digits in that stretch. But up until that point, he had been playing really well. Like I said, he was the team's leading scorer for the majority of the season, averaging 13, 14 points per game. He needs to get back to that. UCLA needs him to get back to that in order to win games and kind of put away inferior opponents like Washington. And sadly for UCLA, they don't have too many of those left. So they can't really get away with what they did against the Washington schools and get a road split against better opponents when Jaime Jaquez isn't playing well, when Tiger Campbell isn't playing well either. Tiger Campbell had a really good first half against Washington State and kind of disappeared down the stretch. You can't really have him do that. He's a key to your offense. Jaime Jaquez is a key to on both sides of the floor. But it doesn't have to be one guy who steps up. Those are 2 options, 2 guys who should step up. But it's really the past 2 games, the Washington and Washington State game, you had 2 guys on the entire team who scored more than 7 points in each of the games. So that's bad. You can't be like you said, we'll be talking about Johnny Juzang in a bit, but you can't rely on one guy or maybe 2. I mean, Bernard had 14, but most of that was pretty late and good for him. But for a majority of that Washington game, it was all Johnny Juzang and nothing else. He outscored Washington by himself in the first half. That's great. But UCLA was only up, 5, 6? That's not a good sign for your team when you're that reliant on one guy who, as we'll talk about later, has seen his fair share of inconsistency so far.
Yeah, and UCLA is not a jump shooting team. They've never been that kind of team. Mick Cronin has never really coached those kinds of teams. So, and you shouldn't expect them to be that team. If they have to rely on a lot of jump shots throughout the game, they're not working to their game plan. If they have to just shoot from 3 over and over and over again, while that might work in some nights, you had the Jake Hyman Washington game last year. You've got the Johnny Juzang Washington game this year. It's just, you can't rely on that over and over again for a UCLA team because there's nights where that's going to go cold. And if you get to the NCAA tournament and you're still relying on a jump shot, you're going to go out in the first or second round because inevitably, as we've seen with this UCLA team, they aren't consistent yet. They have really good nights. And at their best, they are definitely a top 25 team, possibly a Sweet 16 team. But at their worst, they're a team that misses shots over and over. And if they continue to get in these close games, there's going to be some nights where those buckets don't fall at the end. They've been lucky so far. The wins against Washington, the wins over Arizona both times, both over Arizona and Arizona State. But you just can't rely on these every single time, because there's going to be nights like the game at Stanford where you're just going to get beat late, and that happens, and that's okay. But at least if you're playing well and going with your game plan, you can't be mad at that. But if you're having to rely on Johnny Juzang to take 20, 30 shots a night, that's not Mick Cronin's plan. He knows that's not his plan. He's talked about that not being his plan. And UCLA can't just fall back on that every single time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this team has struggled to beat good teams. It's struggled to beat bad teams. They make everything look really difficult, and that's not going to cut it down the stretch, especially when you're playing better teams. I mean, Arizona State has a lot of talent, even if they're not playing well at all in conference play. Arizona, they're playing pretty well, even though they have their postseason ban. We'll talk about those games later. Who knows what will happen to the Oregon games, playing USC again. You go on the road for the mountain schools, and then the Pac-12 tournament. That's a pretty grueling end to the regular season here, and into the postseason too. So there's less wiggle room for UCLA. Like you said, they're not going to be able to get away with what they have been over these past few weeks and still close out with wins. They need to change. They need to step up in a lot of different areas. Whether it's free throws, they got out rebounded against Washington State and USC back games the first time under Mick Cronin. That can't happen again. They can't allow guards to shoot threes like 5 times more than they do. They're getting beat on the perimeter. They're getting beat down low. And that's just not a recipe for success. They can still grind out some wins, as we've seen, but a lot of room to improve. So moving on from this past weekend and the games against Washington State, let's talk about Johnny Juzang, who was really the star of those 2 games. He ended up winning Pac-12 Player of the Week, the first time UCLA has got that this season. First time in a very long time. It seems like we've been talking about it all year long, how UCLA is not a star-oriented team. But here you go. Johnny Juzang, former high 4-star recruit out of Southern California, goes to Kentucky, kind of rides the bench there. He comes back here. He's in and out of the lineup early in the year, and now he's really coming on. 25 points, 28 points. He's scoring in droves. That's great, but he's inconsistent. He takes a lot of shots. His plus-minus isn't always good. Jack, what do you think UCLA needs out of Johnny Juzang down the stretch here, and what do you think he can be? What's his ceiling?
I mean, he just needs to be the guy. He needs to be a 3-and-D guy is really what he needs to rely on. He's obviously not the best defender. He's not super tall, but just giving any effort on defense. He does really well on the boards, and you can tell he's always chasing those rebounds. That's great. Boxing out your guy is always perfect. That's the little things you need to do, because we know Johnny Juzang can go hot at any time, but we also know he can go cold at any time. There's nights where his shot just doesn't look on. It looks like there's just something a little bit wrong, and you can tell pretty early on, maybe in the first half, sometimes coming out of halftime, it just looks like he tweaked something that he didn't need to tweak, and the ball's just not going in the hoop. Now, there's also nights where UCLA is going to rely on him to be their offensive catalyst. He scored half of the points in the game against Washington for UCLA. That's huge. That's an enormous number. But to rely on someone like that over and over to just score points for you is not a winning formula. Yes, it can win you games, but it's not a recipe for success over a full season. However, if Johnny Juzang is hot and he's getting it going, feed him the ball. Rely on him a little bit more for those games. Open up your other shooters. Get a David Singleton, a Jake Kyman, a Jaime Jaquez. Open it up so that Tiger Campbell and Cody Riley can play their pick-and-roll game while the defense is really focusing on Johnny Juzang. He opened up a lot of opportunities for the Bruins on the offensive side of the ball. It's just whether Mick Cronin can really utilize that and take advantage of the nights where he's very hot, and if the rest of the Bruins can overcome it when he is a little bit off.
Yeah, I'm just going to go off what you said. Can Cronin take advantage of the games where he's hot? Really, since Juzang has exploded, I mean, he had some solid games early in the year, but he kind of tailed off early in conference play. starting with that Stanford game where he was automatic, on fire, whatever, however you want to say it. So the last 5 games, he's averaging 21 points, 7 rebounds. Like you said, he's fighting for boards. He's active there. He's shooting 36% from 3 on nearly 8 attempts per game, 47% from 2, and almost 93% from the free throw line. A steal per game, 2.5 assists per game. He's playing really well. The only issue is UCLA is 2-3 in those 5 games. So what is it about his success, his style of play, his role in the offense that doesn't align with UCLA's team success? I don't want to blame him and say, oh, when he plays well, the team plays poorly. The correlation isn't always causation. I don't want to put the blame on him. But how does Mick Cronin go forward knowing that Johnny Juzang shooting the ball well doesn't always lead to wins? Sometimes it does. It did against Washington. It didn't against Stanford. So what's the common denominator between wins when Juzang plays poorly and losses when he plays well? You have to be able to work that out. I trust that he will, but it's really going to take a lot of looking at game film, planning moving forward about how you're going to match him up with guys defensively. Like you said, you wanted to be a 3-and-D guy. I don't think that's him. I mean, people complain about Jake Kyman's defense last year and early this year. I think Kyman is a better defender than Johnny Juzang this year. And that's not a huge insult to Juzang because I think Kyman's actually taken a step up. He's taking charges. He's diving for loose balls, whatever it is. I just don't think Juzang's going to be a defensive anchor for you. And not even that. I don't think he's going to be a plus defensive player. So how do you hide him as a defender? How do you utilize him as a scorer? And not just a shooter, but a scorer. In these last 5 games, when he's shooting 93% from the free throw line, it's only 2.5 attempts per game. So he's getting fouled once per game, pretty much. That's got to be more. I want to see him take it to the rack. I want to see him draw contact. I don't want to see him go to the hoop looking for contact, because when that happens, you don't get the foul call. You waste a possession. You waste a shot. I want to see him aggressive in the lane, and maybe that comes at the cost of being less aggressive outside on the perimeter. I'm okay with that. I want him at the line. I think him drawing contact and taking free throws kind of fixes your problem that we were talking about earlier. Free throw shooting. How about you put your best shooter at the line as often as possible? Who knows? I mean, Johnny Juzang and James Harden are 2 very different players, but James Harden knows how to do it. He gets fouled. He takes threes. That's the way to do it. So far, Johnny Juzang's mostly just taking threes. I want to see him take a little more, some more shots beneath the basket. I want to see him really take advantage of how good of a free throw shooter he is.
Yeah, my only problem with that is it seems that sometimes on his drives, he looks like he gets stalled out a little bit too quickly. It looks like bigger defenders when they're guarding.
That happened against USC, absolutely.
All the time. It just looks like, and then he'll stop and he'll take a long 2, which is just completely inefficient. Sometimes he's able to pass that back out. Learn from Jules Bernard. Jules Bernard is a guy that looks like every time he's going to go to the basket, especially the last couple of years. This year he's gone a little bit better at it. The last couple of years, every time he got the ball and started driving, it seemed like it was either going to be blocked at the rim or it was going to be a layup. Those were the only 2 outcomes every single time. If Johnny Juzang,
maybe a turnover off his knee,
possibly that, but I feel like Johnny Juzang is a little bit better of a dribbler. He's obviously a little bit more talented than Jules Bernard is at the moment. I mean, this guy was recruited and went to Kentucky for a reason. He's got the talent. He knows how to do it. It's just taking that effort. I'd also like to see UCLA, when Juzang has the ball, have a little bit more movement on offense. It seems at times that when he catches the ball, everyone else on the offense is standing still. Maybe you've got Cody Riley moving around a little bit on the inside. Maybe you've got Tiger Campbell rolling up as an outlet pass, something like that. But just move a little bit more on the offense, open up things, confuse the defenders, make it easier for Juzang to drive or to pass it or to – I mean, honestly, if Juzang's getting hot, guys are leaving people like Tiger Campbell and Jaime Hawkes open, and those guys are both good scorers. We've seen them time and time again this year be able to do that, but we've also seen them time and time again just lose their shots for no reasons for games. I mean, as we already talked about, Jaime Hawkes just disappeared mostly for this weekend. If Juzang gets hot and either Tiger Campbell or Jaime Hawkes gets hot at the same time, this Bruin team is pretty much unbeatable, especially on the offensive end. Now, when you get down to the defensive end, Tiger Campbell, Johnny Juzang, if you have another guy like a David Singleton or Jake Kyman out there, they're going to struggle on that end, and we've seen that. But if they do get a Jalen Hill back, if Jaime Jaquez continues to be amazing on defense, Cody Riley's looked like he's a lot better this year. They're able to stop other teams enough and grab enough boards to put teams to bed early. They just haven't been able to do that this year. And while they've won close games, they shouldn't be in so many close games.
Yeah, absolutely. And Johnny Juzang, I think something that I really like out of him, and I think makes him, it shows how high his ceiling can be, that he doesn't always have to play in the system, is anyone on this team. UCLA is a good rebounding team. They win the rebounding battle most nights. With Jalen Hill when he's playing, Cody Riley, Jaime Jaquez is a good rebounder. Jules Bernard's a really good rebounder for a guard. When those guys get a rebound, they run the offense really slowly. They take it up. They take their time. Give it to Tyreek Campbell. He runs a couple seconds off the clock, and they set up their offense, and it's a little monotonous, and that's fine. That's the way Mick Cronin likes to play. Their pace is towards the bottom of Division I. They're a really slow team. But Johnny Juzang, and he's getting 7 rebounds a game in his last 5 games, so this happens pretty often. Whenever he gets a defensive rebound, that dude books it up the court with the ball. He is pushing it. He's pushing for a fast break to catch the defense off guard, and that's awesome. And I don't know if that kind of tires him out and he can't play as well on defense, or how often it leads to turnovers and he's scrambling to get back on defense, or what it does to his fatigue. I don't know about all that. I'll just say I enjoy watching him push the ball. I enjoy seeing him succeed in a way that none of his other teammates have, in a way that it doesn't really seem like meshes super well with Mick Cronin's coaching style, which, I mean, the fact that Cronin hasn't told him to stop doing that, or made him stop, or gets frustrated, that's a good thing. It means maybe Cronin's exploring that possibility a little bit, or is letting Juzang be himself. I like seeing that. And talking about Juzang's ceiling, he's not going to be scoring 21 per game like he has over these last 5 games, but he's a guy who I think at this point will be a 4-year guy in college, and I think by the time he's an upperclassman, the next seasons, he'll be scoring in the high teens per game. Yeah. Doesn't mean he'll be the best player in the Pac-12. Doesn't mean he'll be the best scorer in the Pac-12, but he'll put up numbers and he'll do things for your offense that no one else in your team can. Once again, doesn't mean he's the best player in the team. I think Tyreek Campbell, Jaime Jaquez, Jalen Hill, Cody Riley are arguably more important to this team's success overall. But Johnny Juzang does what other people on this team can't, and that's good to see, just out of a sense of diversity of play styles that gives you an ability to do something that maybe Jaime Jaquez or Jules Bernard can't do. They can't push like he can. They can't take 8 threes per game like he can. And I'm talking about Juzang should take more 2s. Should be more under the basket, but he's still taking 10 2s per game. Most of them are mid-range, like you said, not very efficient, but I don't think anyone else on this team can do what Juzang's doing. So he needs to stay in this role and keep just running it to the max, do whatever he can, full effort, and he can be a huge part of this team, but not the most important.
Yeah, and guys like Chris Smith is probably going to the NBA after this year. Cody Riley, Jalen Hill, redshirt juniors. In a couple years, this could be Johnny Juzang's team. We don't know what's happening with Jaime Jaquez, Tyreek Campbell, how long they're going to stay, if they're going to develop anymore, if they're going to get better. They hopefully will. But if Johnny Juzang is a guy that's averaging almost 20 points a game, it's his team. I mean, you always look at, guys like McKinley Wright, that he is the focal point for Colorado for good reason, because he is a guy that can score almost at will for most of these games. If UCLA needs someone like that, a Mick Cronin team could benefit from someone like that, because they're usually going to be a staunch defensive team, but they need a little bit more creativity on the offensive side. And if Johnny Juzang can bring that night in and night out, every single time on the court, this UCLA team is going to be scary.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting moving forward, like you're talking about in the future. Peyton Watson's a 5-star small forward coming next year. How do the two of them line up together? Does Juzang play more shooting guard, or maybe he plays more 3 and Watson plays a 2 or a 4, whatever it is? I think that could be an interesting little wrench to throw in there. Don't know if it benefits him or if it hurts him, whatever. But I think it'll be interesting to see him play with another ball-dominant wing like Peyton Watson when he comes in. So enough with Johnny Juzang. We've been talking a lot about him, and for good reason. He had a great weekend. But let's move on to this upcoming weekend. UCLA is playing Arizona State, and on Thursday they're playing Arizona on Saturday. Two big games for UCLA when they're trying to claw their way back up to the top, get that regular season Pac-12 title that's been evading them for a couple years now, get the best seeding for the Pac-12 tournament. So, Jack, what do you think UCLA needs to do to pull out a sweep here at home? And what do the last times that these teams played, how does that play into these two matchups this weekend?
Well, first thing, hit your free throws. You're at Poly, you're at home, you've been practicing there, you know how to hit free throws there, hit your free throws. But one of the biggest things that stood out to me the last time they were playing the Arizona schools was specifically the Tiger Campbell game. It was his birthday. He went off for a lot of points. You know, he's usually the assist guy. He's usually the guy that's providing his teammates. I need him and Jaime Hawkins to each have one huge game because Johnny Juzang will go out there. He'll get his shots. Jules Bernard's always putting in some points. Cody Riley's going to have to battle against some good bigs. It's time for Tiger Campbell and Jaime Hawkins to step back into it, refocus, and for the last few weeks of the season, play like there's no tomorrow, because realistically, who knows how far this UCLA team is going to be able to go. They're pretty set for an NCAA tournament bid if they win out most of their games. You know, a loss to USC hurts, but I don't think it will kill them. But losses to both Arizona and Arizona State is a pretty big dagger, especially for seeding the Pac-12 tournament and ultimately NCAA tournament seeding. So I'm looking for Tiger Campbell and Jaime Hawkins to really bounce back. I don't think Johnny Juzang will average, double or 21 points again. I don't think he'll hit a 32-point game either game this weekend. But if he provides a decent amount and those other two guys come back into their form, it's going to be pretty hard for the Bruins to lose on their home court. They haven't lost there all season. They're comfortable. I think they should be able to win both these games, but it's really contingent on those two guys coming back and taking this team to the next level.
Yeah, like you said, Johnny Juzang, you'd love to see a 30-burger like you did against Washington, but can't rely on that every time out. When it comes to the Arizona, it was Arizona on Thursday, Arizona State on Saturday. Just a correction there. But it's interesting when you look at last season. It was the last homestand of the season before they went to USC for the regular season finale and lost that. But the Arizona State games, UCLA was hot. They were, even before those games, one of the hottest teams in the country, definitely the hottest in the Pac-12. They fought their way all the way up to the top of the Pac-12 standings after a slow start, and they demolished Arizona in the second game of the weekend. But more importantly, they beat Arizona State on that buzzer beater from Jaime Hawkins, which on the pass from Tiger Campbell. So the two of them, they single-handedly sank Arizona State in a really interesting game. And then they came back two nights later and they stomped out Arizona. So I would like to say, it's weird though, because this team is, I don't want to say ice cold, but not hot, not as hot as they were 3 weeks ago. They're definitely not playing like they were at the end of last season. But if this is your last 2-game homestand, because you got the road games in the mountains and then you got the home game against USC to round out the year after this, I want to see something similar to last year, and I believe that we're going to get that. I think you get one blowout and one really close game, a signature win. And I think UCLA defends its home court. They haven't lost at Pauley Pavilion since early January of 2020. It's been a long time. They defended their home court. And I said it last week on last week's show and was completely wrong. But now is the time that Jaime Hawkins steps up. I want to see him bury Arizona State again like he did last year on the buzzer beater 3. I want to see him step up. Maybe it's not for a whole game. I want to see him make a game-deciding play like he did last year, and I think he can do that. And I'm looking forward to see what we can get out of him, out of Tiger Campbell, Cody Riley, because we know that Johnny Juzang can score, and when he doesn't, we know he's not really much of a factor. I want to see those other core guys explode. I want to see them make a difference, and I want to see them lead UCLA to 2 wins at home this weekend.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on a little bit, but a big win against either one of these teams would do huge wonders for UCLA's confidence. They've looked a little rusty. They had a lot of really close games, but that one win against Washington State was huge for them originally. It looked like they were feeding off a lot of momentum. They looked like they had found themselves. They need to get back to that. Arizona and Arizona State aren't the easiest teams to beat. They have a lot of talent on both of those squads. But one huge win against either one of them, which isn't impossible, puts you on a good track to go to Colorado and Utah and have some good games, and to have that rematch against USC, hopefully a little bit healthier, hopefully with Jalen Hill and Cody Riley back in the lineup, healthy and ready to go, and possibly upset USC in that regular season finale.
Absolutely. These are the key games for UCLA right now. I think, depending on where you look, they're anywhere from a 7 to a 9 seed. It's not the position you want to be in, because if you're a 7 seed, you're playing a 2 seed round 2. If you're a 9, you're playing a 1 seed round 2. You got to get into that 4, 5, 6 range. And to get there, you're going to have to win 4 out of 5 down the stretch and then do well in the Pac-12 tournament. So there's a lot at stake. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. UCLA against Arizona at Pauley Pavilion, 6 o'clock on tomorrow night, Thursday night on ESPN2. And they'll be back out at Arizona State against UCLA, 7 p.m. on ESPN2. So we're looking forward to those. We're looking forward to the rest of the season. I will say, Jack, the USC game to round out the year, I'm seeing it's on CBS, and that'll just give me like a little taste. I hate that UCLA doesn't play on CBS more, because the graphics and the theme music for CBS college basketball is iconic. Just makes me think of March Madness. I can't wait. Bruins are going to be in March Madness this time. I truly believe it, but that USC game will be a nice little preview of a high-stakes game with the CBS presentation. I can't wait.
Oh, it's going to be so good. I can't wait to see UCLA play it at Pauley, and hopefully maybe bring back the color clashing jerseys, possibly, if they could do that. That'd be
Probably. Cool. All right, that's all we have this week. We'll be back again next week at our normal time, Monday at 4 p.m. So thank you for tuning in if you're watching live, or if you're watching the rerun. Thanks for watching anyways. You know where to find us. We're on Twitter at DashSportsTV. I'm on Twitter at Sam Connon, and Jack's on Twitter at Jack C. Perez. So Jack, thanks for joining me to talk UCLA today.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Wonderful to be here with you as always.
All right. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Trojan Dash, an historic edition of Trojan Dash. This is the first ever live game watch party in Trojan Dash history. I'm stoked, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Anthony. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm excited. What about you?
Dude, I'm stoked. So for anybody who didn't see my tweet earlier today about what we're doing right now is Anthony and I have the game on live. We're going to be reacting, watching, breaking it down as we go. But an important note, due to copyright issues and us not having any money and us obviously not wanting to get sued, you have to pull the game up on your own TV. So pull that up, turn down the volume. The broadcast crew is a little iffy today, all due respect. And turn up our voices and fill your ears with some Trojan Dash breakdowns. But Anthony, we are about a minute and a half into the second half. Tell me about your first half takeaways. What stuck out to you about this game?
Yeah, well, it's been very fast paced. That's one thing. I mean, I think it was like 42 points, 44 points in the first half. And I apologize if I keep looking up. I'm just trying to watch the game. But yeah, it's been very fast paced. And Arizona State has been doing what they do as advertised. They're pulling up from three. They're playing super energetic, and it's been hard. I mean, USC right now is in a 3-2, which I thought was a little bizarre because this is a good shooting team, but they've kind of slowed it down. And Isaiah Mobley has been very aggressive. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now, just about him getting more assertive. And I mean, so far it looks like a good game. I think the first half was definitely playing out for Arizona State to win, and they're getting into some foul trouble, but I mean, USC looks in control right now.
Yeah, the thing about the first half that really stuck out to me was in the ESPN2 broadcast crew was saying this pretty much the whole time, is that this game is fast. This game is an offensive shootout. This game is one that actually probably doesn't favor the Trojans because we know how this team has become so good, and it's become what we're seeing on the screen right now, Evan Mobley with the steal and the breakaway dunk. And it's all starting on the defensive side, right? And I don't think this team is built. They can certainly win, offensive shootout games where you're going to have to score 85 points to win. But this team is built on their length, on their defense, and being able to win the sort of 56 to 52 kind of games that we've seen them win all season. And again, they can win this game. I mean, they're up 9 points right now, so it's just one of those things where they're going to have to slow the game down. They've been doing a better job of that early in the second half of just controlling the tempo and saying, look, this is our game. We're going to play our way. And if we play our way, really nobody in the Pac-12 can beat us, especially a team that, look, Arizona State's fine. They're not a bad team, but they're certainly not one of the Pac-12's, I guess, elite teams, although there aren't too many elite teams in the Pac-12 right now. So it seems like they're doing a better job of that early on. And if they can stick with that, it seems like they're probably going to break away.
Yeah, I mean, the fast pace is really, that's not their style, but I think they were shooting like almost 60% in the first half. I mean, no matter how fast the game is, you shoot 60%, you're probably going to win. And so that's really what we're seeing right now. And they were hitting open threes. Taj Edey, we were talking about it right before we went live.
Yeah.
He's been on fire, and he's balling out. And something that I just noticed, Drew Peterson is not starting. Oh. And that was something that Enfield, oh my God, a 4-point play. Yeah. Remy Martin?
Yeah, that guy's good. That guy's really good.
Oh, yeah, he's a baller, man. I think he had like 13 or like the first 10 minutes or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I kept on saying, like, look at Isaiah Mobley, look at Taj Edey, those guys are going off, and then they each had like 10, and it's like Remy Martin's got 17. It's like, okay, like I didn't really, catch wind of that until later in the second half. I mean, that wasn't Remy Martin, but Remy Martin's still a bucket.
Yeah, that's Holland Woods. He actually went off the first game. I don't know if you remember. I think he had like 18 points on like 3 missed shots, which is just ridiculous. So I mean, he's picking it up too.
And I think one of the things about the first game, which is, one of the reasons I wasn't feeling, I wasn't feeling like this game was necessarily a lock for the Trojans to win, is that Arizona State was shorthanded in that first game. They were missing several guys, including I believe Remy Martin was not playing in that game. So, you kind of knew that the team that USC was going to play today was going to be a team that is certainly capable of scoring a lot more points than they did the previous game. I don't remember the exact score, but
I think it was about
this is a better.
I think they had like 70. It was like 73 to 64. I think that was the final score. So that's higher than what USC averages.
Yeah, it's definitely higher than what USC is used to, and it looks like they're going to go through that right now. But then you have, we've talked a lot about early in the second half for this Trojan team, and that's where they tend to win and lose games. And Arizona State's on a 6-0 run right now, so they're going to have to put a stop to this. But you see Isaiah Mobley working in the paint. Isaiah and Taj Edey, I think that was really the story of the first half. Those guys were just going nuts. And to me, Isaiah Mobley, it was his confidence that just looked like it was at an all-time high in the first half. And I mean, that's what happens when you start, getting buckets. They just sort of keep on playing into each other. But we were talking last show about how, Evan Mobley was on this tear, and yeah, he's been on a tear the whole season. He just won his second straight National Player of the Week award. And his tear, like his especially big tear, which is really saying quite a lot for Evan Mobley, sort of coincided with the 5-game stretch when Isaiah Mobley was putting up, 6, 7, 9, 6, 7 points. And you and I both agree that we weren't concerned about that at all, because that's sort of what happens when you have two guys who they have very similar play styles. I mean, Evan's probably, a better ball handler, a better 3-point shooter, but, they're both big guys who are going to make the money down low. And, you can't have both of them go for 25 points a game. It's just not the way basketball works. So I think once Evan Mobley, he hasn't really slowed down, but you and I both wanted to see Isaiah Mobley become a bigger factor in this offense. And I think we've seen that the last couple games, and especially the first half, I think was about as well and about as confident as, he hit a 3. It was like a 6-3 of the entire season. And yeah, the shot clock was like winding down, but there was not much hesitation once, he realized he was in that position. That's not something that I saw last year, and it's not something that I saw early on this season either, especially when Evan Mobley was going crazy.
Yeah, well, this is a perfect matchup for him. Arizona State is really small. The tallest player is 6'10", which compared to USC is just like a point guard at that point. But he's getting more aggressive, and I think it's the confidence. And look, I don't want to take any blame, but I wrote a column about this, asking him to be more aggressive, and I'm sure he read it. I swear, I think he did, because he just came out right now and he's been balling. So that's really what they need. And look, Evan Mobley, there's going to be games where he's going to get doubled, and the whole team is going to be trying to stop him. And that's where Tajiri and Isaiah Mobley get even more important. And we're seeing it right now. Arizona State was basically doubling Evan Mobley every second he touched the ball. And then he's been kicking it out to the perimeter, having Tajiri be more aggressive. And there were times, I think, where Isaiah Mobley got the rebound and literally just went down the court, coast to coast, and just gave it up. Yeah. There was one play in particular, got the rebound, brought it up, was getting very pressured by an Arizona State guard, was able to keep the ball and then throw a lob to his brother or dish it off. So that's something that's a great sign for him. And, he's getting the confidence now as they're showing, I think, the replays.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is. He needs a game like this to get himself more aggressive, get into rhythm, because, when March Madness comes around, even the tournament, everyone's going to be doing the same thing Arizona State is doing right now. Try to focus on Evan Mobley. That's when he's going to have to really get out of it. And that was the dunk right there, but like you said, he's a big part of it, and him and Tajiri have been balling. It's been very, very good to see. And I think Evan Mobley really doesn't have too many points either.
No, this certainly isn't one of his signature games, but I think one of the things that I've seen from Isaiah that I think has especially benefited him in recent games is that the chemistry with Evan is just pretty much, you see that? We talk about how Evan's not really going crazy this game. He's 5 for 5 with 12 rebounds. That's kind of what happens. Yeah, so still, it's not even one of his best games. So he could finish with 30, but we'll see. But back to what I was saying, it's the chemistry between the Mobley brothers that's really brought out the best in Isaiah, and you obviously expect that. They've been playing together their whole entire lives. They're 1 year apart. They're both superstar phenom brothers. They're obviously going to have some good on the floor chemistry, but. Right there, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Evan, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Evan is getting double teamed down low. Isaiah just comes around backdoor on the baseline, hits him, dunk, and one. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And I feel so smart right now because that timed perfectly with what I was saying. But those kinds of plays, have been happening several times every game, and they've been going both ways, right? You have beautiful passes from Evan to Isaiah. You have beautiful passes coming back the other way too. And, that's just Isaiah's become so much better because of that, and he's hitting free throws there, and that's what you like to see. He's just really come into his own the last couple games. Yeah, he's really come into his own the last couple games, and it's what USC needed to get to the next level, I think, because this team was never going to really thrive with, Evan Mobley and then a bunch of role players that just try to make Evan Mobley better. And what we've been seeing so far is we've been seeing Isaiah really be, sort of that I don't know. I don't even want to call him like an option 2 or an option B. You can call him a sort of 1B down low, I guess. And the way that they've been playing together has just been awesome to see.
Yeah, you talked about that. I mean, can we acknowledge Remy Martin? Did you see that? The one-legged step back? This guy's ridiculous. I think he's like 8 of 11 for almost like 20 points. I mean, he's working on Taj Judy now, but I mean, these guards are crazy. And all the players are talking about it. They're going to try to force them towards the bigs, but like, how do you force these guys when they're hitting step back threes? Like,
exactly. Yeah.
It's just, and also Eddie House's son is on this team. I don't know if you know Eddie House. You know, I'm a Laker fan, so I hate Eddie House.
Yeah.
He was on the Celtics, but his son is there, and that dude shoots just like him. And it's scary. I mean, I didn't even notice how many guards these guys had that are just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, if you just like look at the matchups on the floor, and one of the broadcasters, I forget exactly who, was saying this early on in the game. They were saying that if you look if you just look on the floor for a second, you'll see like pretty much every matchup height-wise favors the Trojans, right? Mm-hmm. But I think what you've seen from this Arizona State team is you've seen sort of they're not phased. They look not afraid. They've been pounding the ball in the paint all game. They've been getting buckets down low, whether it's faking out Evan Mobley once or twice or, awesome ball movement to get it low. They've been really not just like, adjusting to what USC does well and sort of hitting perimeter shots all game, because they've been doing that too, but they just seem like they've been unafraid. And I think, look, that's one way I think you have to attack this USC team, and because Evan Mobley's going to do things like that and dunk over dudes that try to guard him down low. So they've been penetrating, and USC's long, but when guys put nasty moves on you and hit step backs like that, there's not really much that you can do.
Yeah, really. I mean, and this is basically like a 4-guard lineup. Even I could say like a 3-guard, and then maybe even like a small forward, and that's really it. I mean, they have no size. It's crazy that this is even an 8-point game. I mean, it's credit to Arizona State. I mean, they're sticking in it. Oh my God, that's another 3 from Isaiah. But
even that shot by Isaiah, right? There's like 20 seconds left in the shot clock, something right now, and he's a few feet beyond the 3-point line. And I'm not going to say, look, he should be taking that shot every time. Oh, that could have been nasty.
Oh my God.
I'm not going to say, look, he should be taking that shot every time he gets it, because he's not the best, obviously, 3-point shooter in the world. But when you see him taking those shots, you just see how confident he is, and that's something that you didn't see last year. He was pretty much, get the ball down low, and the footwork's kind of he's not always super coordinated, but outside of the key, he wasn't really much of a factor. But now you just see him doing everything, and then you see him down low getting double teamed right there. Another beautiful pass from Mobley to Mobley. So yeah, it's just, I mean, as far as versatility goes, as far as confidence goes, as far as the sort of things that he can do and the sort of things that he feels confident doing on the floor, Isaiah looks like a completely different basketball player this season, and especially in the last few games.
He just looks way more confident. I mean, like you mentioned, that 3, like, I mean, if someone hasn't watched USC throughout the season, they see that, they'll think it's a bad shot. But to be honest, it's a good shot, because that just means he's being aggressive, and he's playing with extra effort. And, off that double team from Evan to Isaiah, that's just unguardable, because if Isaiah is towards the box as opposed to going on the wing or in the corner, it just makes it easier to double team, and the pass is tougher. Literally, I mean, Evan just like hands it off to him in the box. So it's just such a simple play, and you get an easy layup or easy dunk. So that's just the little things right now is what I'm paying attention to. They're really figuring it out. And if they can maintain that, I mean, this is going to be hard. I mean, and they're shooting really well too. I think I don't know what Drew Peterson's style line is, but he's been playing a little bit more aggressive. I think coming off the bench for him in the second half might have been a smart thing to do against this team. I think another 3. Hold on.
Yeah, Arizona State's had some chances to get back in this thing. They've had a lot of open looks like that. They've been sort of hanging around the 7, 8, 9 mark for a few minutes now, and they've had some open looks where they can really cut this thing and make it a game, but they haven't been able to convert. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, don't worry. Yeah, no, but that's the thing. Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, they're still getting open shots. They're just not hitting it. That's scary, because at some point those shots are going to fall. And I don't know if they're still running a zone. I hope not, because when I saw it in the first half, they're running a zone. The last thing you want to do against a good shooting team is run a zone. And they came out with the zone. So it's a little suspicious, but I think right now they're in a good position, and they got to figure it out. But Tajiri right now too, he's been a little slower, but the first half he was killing it, and I think that's another thing that comes from Evan Mobley getting doubled. Tajiri,
Yeah.
Isaiah Mobley are going to go off.
Yeah, and I mean the thing about Evan getting doubled is like, Arizona State's not that big to begin with. So when you put your two biggest guys, usually it's been their two biggest guys down low on Evan, their third biggest guy's not going to be that big because they're just not that big of a team. So then you give it to Isaiah, who Evan's 7-0, Isaiah's 6'11" and 3/4 or something like that. Like, it's just going to be a mismatch all day. And, Isaiah hasn't been open in those, dunks down low and those looks in the paint and the key. It's like he's just been going over guys, and that's what they can do when, again, you put your two biggest guys on Evan Mobley. It's just going to work all day, and that's how they've been exploiting this Arizona State defense.
Yeah, it's just a perfect matchup, really, for them. I mean, this is the tallest team in the nation playing against. I mean, they have an advantage basically every game because of their height, but now they're playing a team that's pretty small. I mean, I think their tallest player was 6'10", and I checked. I think it was the last game. He'd only played 1 minute, so he's just not even in the rotation. And if they're in foul trouble, he's gonna have to come in. But we got a question in the chat, Nathan. Do you want to address it?
Yeah, we got, what pick do you guys think Evan Mobley will be? It's from Armand. I mean, man, he's got to be USC's highest draft pick ever, right? OJ Mayo went number 3, and I think 2007, 2008, something like that. I don't see Evan Mobley going anywhere lower than 2. I think Cade Cunningham out of Oklahoma State is the only guy that can really challenge him for the number 1 pick, and it's probably more than really challenge him. I mean, he's got a decent shot at being the first overall pick. That guy's a bucket too, but Evan just projects, to me, he just projects so well at the next level. And he's tall. People make the KD comparison because of his build, but it's not really his style of play at all, right? He's not really going to pull up and hit, 35-foot threes with his hands 10 feet over his head because he's got 12-foot long arms. So, but, they have the same frame. They're both quick. They can both handle the ball. They're both good passers. And I think it's just teams are gonna notice that and say, we need to use a top pick on him. And I don't think I've seen him going anywhere lower in ESPN mock drafts, whoever mock drafts, than number 2. I've seen both Cunningham and Mobley put up in that number 1 spot, but pretty much whoever's not number 1 is number 2 in all those mocks. So yeah, I think if I had to put money on it right now, I'd say he goes number 2. But just because I think Cunningham can be more of a threat at the next level, if that makes sense. But yeah, he could definitely go number 1. It depends. Well, a lot of this is going to be decided on what they do against high level competition when the stakes are high in March Madness and the Pac-12 tournament, things like that. And those are things that we have to see. But one thing about Evan and one thing about really this team as a whole that I think is pretty much undeniable at this point is you have Ethan Anderson, who's suddenly automatic 3-point shooter, which is good to see. Man. But I think when you see Evan Mobley, playing like he does against quality opponents like you've seen him already do, I think you're going to see that he can match up with pretty much anybody. And, you're going to want to use a number 1, number 2 overall pick on him. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely I agree he's going to be a top 2 pick. I got a hot take. I really think if he was in an ACC or, one of those other big conferences, people don't really think of the Pac-12 as really a great basketball conference, compared to the ACC or the Big 12. I think he would be the number 1 pick. I mean, I don't think people would debate it. I think there's a lot of hype surrounding Cade Cunningham because he's at a school like Oklahoma State. I think if Evan Mobley was at one of those big, I'm not saying USC is not a bigger school, but more of those basketball-heavy schools, I think he would be the number 1 pick, no doubt about it. I mean, he just dominates games. I haven't seen one game, maybe against the Utah earlier in the season when he didn't even have a field goal, but I haven't seen one game where he's just been out of it, not been able to contribute. If he's not scoring, he's rebounding, he's blocking shots. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it also depends who is getting the first pick, and if it's the Wizards or the Pistons. I mean, any of those teams, then they might go a different direction. But I really truly do believe that he would be a number 1 pick if he was in another type of conference like that gets more respect than the Pac-12. If people don't understand, the Pac-12 is a great conference. I mean, there's a lot of great teams. Arizona State, for example, I mean, they're like the middle to the bottom of the conference, and they're still a really great team and hard to play. So I think that if he was in a conference like that, he would be the number one pick, and I don't see why he wouldn't. It really doesn't make sense. I mean, he's a perfect player, in my opinion. Obviously, he's still pretty raw, and he still has to work on some other stuff on the offensive end, like spreading the floor and all that. But I mean, he's a perfect prospect to have and a good system. And anyone in the NBA really take him number one, number two, he would be fine. But I think number two is really the magic number. I think that's where he's going to get it.
Yeah, and the other thing about him, you kind of touched on this a bit, is that like he's tall, but he's not super big, and he has so much room to really fill out in his frame. And I think if he does that, you can see him become like, I mean, he's already pretty dominant down low, but when you get to the league, you're with guys that are also 7 feet tall, and maybe these guys are 260 pounds, something like that. And he has the agility, and he has the footwork, and he has the coordination to be able to beat those kinds of guys. But if you just take Evan Mobley and you make him like a little bigger and a little stronger, like who can guard him? Who can guard him? You know what I'm saying? So I think obviously that's something that can't really happen overnight, but when you have an NBA team that says we can take this and we can make him even better, from a purely physical standpoint, like the ceiling for this guy is so high. It's so high.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I think the next step is obviously just putting on more weight. I mean, that was the question when Giannis got into the NBA. He was just a really skinny dude, did not have a lot of weight on him, did not have a lot of muscle, but 2-3 years went by, he put on the muscle, put on the weight, went through more NBA training and dealing with doctors and different diets and all that. Just getting that NBA level type of guidance. And he's a 2-time MVP now. I'm not saying Evan Mobley's going to be a 2-time MVP, but that can really be the difference between, being, let's say, like maybe like a bust and an all-star type player. If he just puts on more weight, gets stronger. I mean, there's been multiple players. I remember Brandon Ingram, that was the question coming in when he got into the league. Obviously, Kevin Durant, and, they put on some more weight. Obviously, you grow. I mean, he's still 18. I mean, he's still supposed to grow. Pretty ridiculous. I mean, imagine how much taller he could get. Maybe he becomes 7'3". And you never know. I mean, I think Jason Tatum was one player who grew. So, I mean, if he adds weight and he's still growing, it's going to be a problem for a lot of teams.
Yeah. I don't know what exactly they're reviewing right now. They've been meeting with the refs and the coaches for a couple minutes now. But we've talked a lot about the Mobley brothers. Let's talk about somebody who I think has been another difference maker for this team, especially recently and especially in the first half, and that's Taj Edey. That dude is a bucket. He's playing with, I always talk about confidence. He's been playing with so much confidence right now, and he's pretty much automatic when he's open from beyond the 3-point line. As Chavez Goodwin throws up I don't really know what that was, but it's USC. Yeah, USC has been, everybody talks about their length and their forwards and their, Evan Mobleys and their Isaiah Mobleys and how tall they're the tallest team in the nation, and they're so long and blah blah blah. But you can't be an elite team. You can't be a dominant team without some playmaking guards, and that's what Taj Edey brings to this team. He brings experience, he brings leadership, and he just brings a scoring threat that I think you've seen pretty much all season, but especially the last couple of games, and again especially in the first half. And I think when Ethan Anderson came back, we kind of said, this is what's going to make USC's offense really flow. This is going to make USC's offense so much better. And that was right? The offense, it just seems like the rhythm is so much better, and he's creating plays for them. And Anderson, like I said, he's become 3-thin Anderson, as the USC Twitter calls them, although I came up with that nickname first, I will say. And he's been another offensive threat for this team. But when you add in Taj there, I mean, you have guards that I'm not going to come out here and say they're like better than UCLA's guards because UCLA has like 82 of them, but they're guys that can I guess what's the word, complement USC's size.
I mean, that's really it.
Yeah, exactly. They get the job done, and when you have guys like Evan Mobley being double teamed down low, and then he dishes it out to Isaiah Mobley, but if Isaiah is not open, he dishes it out to Taj, and Taj is always open and he hits that three. So One of the things that was sort of a question mark for this team coming into this year was the 3-point ball. And it was not one of the strong suits of this team last year. And then they lost Daniel, you told me they lost Jonah Matthews. And right as I say that, there's a 3-ball.
Yeah, they hit a 3.
Was that a Bonkpolo?
That was Max.
Yeah. So when you have guys like, Noah Bowman, and you have guys like Drew Peterson and Taj Edie and Max Bonkpolo and now Ethan Anderson, it's like, other than free throws, I don't really know what this team's flaws are on the offensive. Well, let me ask you this: what is USC's biggest weakness on the offensive side of the ball other than free throws?
Yeah, well, to talk about free throws, it's kind of bizarre because Andy Enfield holds like multiple records of free throw shooting, and he couldn't have helped them out a little bit more with that. But it's really just, the main thing that I worry about always with this team is scoring droughts. Oh my God, I don't know what happened there, but it's always scoring droughts. That's really it. I mean, in the 3 losses, against UConn, they couldn't get a bucket the final possession. Against Colorado, they couldn't score for seemingly felt like the entire second half. And then against Oregon State, the same thing, as you get a nice reverse layup from
That's a really nice
Arizona State. Miscommunication on defense there. But, yeah, I think the main problem is just they got to find more rhythm on the offensive end, make sure they don't get into any scoring droughts. That's going to kill them. They're going to get the stops, but if they're not getting any buckets back, I mean, might as well just end the game there if you're not going to score.
There's another 3-ball. Is this
getting better rhythm?
Yeah, but it seems like he's always open. Is he just always open? Like he's always over there in the corner somewhere, and he always hits that corner 3. This seems like USC's best offensive game of the season. And one of the things that I hadn't really thought about until just now when we were talking about the free throws was have they shot that many free throws this game? I haven't noticed many free throws, and that's part of the reason why they have 73 points with still over 7 minutes to go. But it seems like this team is just peaking at the right time. You saw the UCLA game. Was that 2 weekends? No, that was 2 weekends ago. And they scored 68 points, 66 points against UCLA, something like that. Do I have that number wrong? Was it in the 80s? Or was it in the 70s?
I can check, but
I don't know. It felt like they scored a bunch of points that game, and it was really all game. And that's, I think, like you talked about in the losses, they kind of come out strong, right? And they put up maybe 35 points in the second half or something like that. But then early in the second half, they just go cold. And that's when teams start to get back in these games. And they end up pulling it out usually. They only have 3 losses in 20 games on the year. But it's really putting a complete 40 minutes of basketball together. And that's what they've been able to do against, UCLA, against whoever they played last, which was Washington State, I think, on Saturday. And they've been putting together complete games. I guess you can credit Andy Enfield for that because, you've seen that this team has talent. You've seen that this team knows what it's doing on the offensive side. But, when you really start to put together complete games, I guess that's a testament to the coaching staff. But that's what I think was holding USC back from being an elite team. And now that they've been able to do that, you've seen March Madness, right? And I think a few of the mocks have USC projected as a 3, 4, 5 seed right around now, which is about where I would put them. I don't think you could really put them as a 2 or obviously a 1 at this point, but they don't seem like they're any lower than a 5 or a 6. So when you start getting into March and you start getting deep into March, like you want to think that this team can do, you're going to be playing teams that, if you take 10 minutes off on the offensive side, like when you're in the Elite 8 or the Final 4 or the Sweet 16 or something like that, it's going to be an uphill battle from there. And you're going to have teams that can slow USC, right? They're not going to be putting up 73 points through the first 32, almost 33 minutes of each game in March Madness in the Pac-12 tournament, things like that. So if they can keep this up, I don't know who can stop them because you've seen what they can do on the defensive side, and that's how they've been able to bail them out of some of these games. Is that when you go cold for 10, 15 minutes, it's like it doesn't really matter because you win 52-50 anyway. These super low scoring battles. So I think you pretty much nailed it, which is that they always had the, I don't know, the elements of being an elite offensive team. They just didn't always have the flow. And when you get Ethan Anderson back, when you get the chemistry and the connection that you've seen from the Mobley brothers the last couple of weeks, when you have Taj Edey playing like he's been playing, when you have them shooting threes like they've been shooting threes, when you have them, playing smooth games that don't require them to get all their points from the free throw line, they're going to win a lot of games. They're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah, I think their offense is criminally underrated, to be honest. I mean, look, they can score the ball, and I think the return of Ethan Anderson really just propelled that. I mean, they're good offense. I mean, it doesn't matter. Their defense is amazing, obviously, but their offense is just, it's not as good, but it's good. I mean, they're winning games. As a lack of a better word, I keep saying good, but you get the point. I think they're one of the best shooting teams in the country too. I think there's a press going on. Gives me a lot of anxiety, especially with Isaiah White on the floor, who sometimes really out of control. But yeah, their offense. Drew Peter. Oh my God.
Oh jeez.
Oh, geez. They just missed like 5 times in a row. But Drew Peterson is going to be.
Oh, that was okay. Wait, hold on a second. How did that happen? That was the most erratic, wild possession I've seen of this entire game, and it somehow ends with an and one for Drew Peterson. But that's kind of the way that this game's been going. They're just getting all these breaks.
Basically, yeah. And whoever wasn't watching, that was just a mess. I don't even know how they even got 3 points out. And he made the free throw. This is just a great. Yeah. This is a great moment. They should just call the game right now. You get an and one, and you make the free throw, and he's in double figures. I don't know what's going on right now, but this is a crazy game. Yeah. But like I was trying to say before that happened, this offense can put up points in ways that many teams probably do not expect. As there goes Remy Martin again. I think he has like almost 30 points, which is just ridiculous. I think, is he the only one who's shooting? I don't get it. I mean, every time I look up, I only see him shooting. They said 28. I've got the little closed captioning on the game because it's muted right now, but it says 28 for Remy Martin. Yeah, I mean, we've it seems like the story of this game so far has been Edey, has been Mobley, and then you look up and Remy Martin's got 28, and there's still 5.5 minutes to go. I mean, is he going to drop 40 and lose? I mean, is that what he's trying to do?
Yeah.
Because and is Josh Christopher done anything? I've not heard his name or seen him do much. I know he killed USC the first game. He's got a timeout, so up by 9 with 5 minutes left. They look in control.
Does he take that time?
I think so, yeah. Bobby Hurley looks mad. Might have seen Duke's record.
Yeah. What a 9-point game, 5. Yeah, this is a weird game. 9-point game with 5:28. Oh, we got a question in the chat. You guys think USC will make the Elite Eight in the March Madness tournament? They have a good squad. Anthony, I'm going to put you on the spot here. How far does USC go in the March Madness? Oh, and by the way, if anybody else in the chat has thoughts on this, please drop them in the comments. We do want to hear what you guys have to say. But Anthony, how far does this team make it? Not how far can this team make it, how far will this team make it?
Yeah, well, great question, Malik. I appreciate that. Look, this is – my heart tells me Elite Eight. But realistically, I'm saying, I honestly do think they'll make it to this team. I think they could win a couple games. For sure, it depends on their seeding. I think when I checked, might have been yesterday, they were projected to be the 4th seed, and they would play Texas Tech in the round of 32, which I think they can take. I haven't watched Texas Tech, apologies, but I think they could win that game. Yeah. And also, if they go, depends who they play really the round after that. And I think they're on Gonzaga's side. And I have my opinions about Gonzaga. I think, if my high school was playing in that conference, I think they'd win a couple games maybe. My high school wasn't that good either. But
yeah, okay, but Gonzaga is so good. Yeah, I don't know if you should be talking smack about.
No, I'm not talking smack. I know they're good. This is about USC, actually. We shouldn't be talking about Gonzaga. But my point is that they can make it pretty far. I think the the Final Four is like way out. I mean, March Madness in itself is just extremely unpredictable. I think an Elite Eight, Sweet 16 is probably more realistic. I think an Elite Eight can happen, but just because it's March Madness and you never know. But I think the Sweet 16 is probably way more realistic. Elite Eight. I mean, if you go to the Elite Eight, if any ever goes to the Elite Eight with this team, like 4 players from last season, they should give him a raise right there and just say, "Hey, man, thank you." that would be just the perfect time. And Remy Martin finally misses. I think that's the first time I've ever seen him miss. But what are your thoughts, though?
I mean, okay. Here's my thing. I think that this team is like not necessarily immune from getting upset, right? And that's why I'm super worried about them getting like a 5 seed, because we always see, 5 versus 12 in March Madness. 12 wins 1 or 2 or 3 of those games every single year. But so I won't say that it can't happen. But again, what I've been seeing in the last couple of games, and it's something that I didn't see in obviously their losses, but even some of their closer wins early on in Pac-12 play, was the consistency and the fact that they've been putting together 40 minutes of basketball, particularly on the offensive side. And this isn't their best defensive game, but it's not a terrible one. And I think, when you put USC in big moments, I think that this team knows how to get the job done on the defensive side. And if it doesn't, they've got the offense to bail themselves out at points. So again, I don't think that it's impossible. As we see the bracketology on the screen right here, it says Joe Lunardi's got him as a 5 seed. I think that's somewhat fair. I think they could still work their way up to a 3 or a 4 seed. I mean, if they win the Pac-12 tournament, you could definitely see them being a 3 or a 4. So yeah, I think they will get past a couple rounds. I think they'll go to at least the Sweet 16. From there, I mean, I think that was where USC's last tournament run ended, was in the Sweet 16, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I wasn't a USC student, so don't quote me on that. I didn't really follow the team, but I think that's as far as they went back in like 2017 or something like that. So I think this team is one of the best teams that we've ever seen. So I think that they're going to go deeper than they've been the last couple of times that they've made the tournament, as you have Evan Mobley with a mid-range. Like, what can he do? So, yeah, I think, I'm going to say, USC goes to the Elite Eight. The Final Four is a lot. And the Final Four is, I mean, if they make the Final Four, they should, that's like, has to be one of USC's best seasons ever. But especially if they're on Gonzaga's side of the bracket. I'm sorry. I know. They're your high school or whatever. Your high school would win a bunch of games in their conference, but I don't really see anybody beating Gonzaga. And then you got Gonzaga and Baylor. There's 2 of your Final Four teams. So it's pretty much a race for 2 spots between 64 minus 2. So I think USC can do it. I think if I had to put my money on a round for them to get knocked out, I would say the Elite Eight right now. But again, like, the way March Madness works and the way college basketball works is it's not really championship or bust unless you're, Gonzaga, or unless you're, well, I would say Duke, Kansas, Kentucky, North Carolina in most years, but they're all unranked this year, so I guess not them. And especially for a team like USC, who, isn't known for being like a basketball powerhouse. They're just sort of starting to get themselves on the map the last couple of years. I think going to the Elite Eight, going to the Sweet 16, even if they do go to the Final Four, that exposure alone would just be so good for this program. So, yeah, I think Elite Eight, if I had to put money on it, I could see them going further. I could see them going to if I see them in a national championship game. And I could see them getting knocked out in the Sweet 16, or like maybe with a crazy upset in the round of 32. But yeah, I think the Elite Eight feels like a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I definitely do agree. And by the way, Evan Mobley, I think he's on triple-double watch. I think last time they showed his stats, he had like 17 or 18, 7, and 7. And that's just that's ridiculous. I don't know if he's ever had a triple-double, but that just shows the game plan of Arizona State. Now they're exploiting it, and he's really grown into that. He's really become a better passer.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of triple doubles in college basketball. We have a question in the chat. What do you guys think is USC's biggest weakness? And so we were talking a couple minutes ago about USC's flaws on the offensive side, and we sort of said other than free throws, because free throws are obviously a glaring weakness. But I think that's the thing that you think is going to bring this team down. It's going to be the free throws, because again, when you get to the Pac-12 tournament, when you get to March Madness, they aren't going to be able to beat every team by 15, 20 points. You're going to have to win some close games, and if you're going 12 of 20 from the free throw line, it's going to be tough to win those games. So yeah, I think free throws has to be. Are they still like above 300 in the nation in free throws? It feels like they've been a bit better the last couple of games. I haven't seen the stats recently, but the last time I saw, they were like 304th in the country, which that's a lot. I didn't even know there were 304 teams in the country, and so yeah, that's the thing that. But that's why they've been able to put up 82 points tonight. Because again, I don't have the numbers right next to me, but I don't think they've shot that many free throws. And when they do, they've shot like 50%. So I think that's got to be USC's biggest weakness. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Free throw shooting is just terrible. I mean, I think Isaiah Mobley was shooting about 40% from the free throw line. Pretty bad. And I think the other thing really is perimeter shooting. Can they consistently shoot well from the three? That's the big thing. I mean, we've seen Tajidi has really been the main suspect of that. I mean, he's a great shooter, but can Drew Peterson get into a better rhythm? Ethan Anderson right now is playing like Curry. Is Mobley just dunks over?
That's not fair. I'm sorry. That's not fair.
Yeah.
He like pump faked one guy, he fell, and then the other guy was in his way, and he just goes over him with his left hand. That's not fair. That's ridiculous.
I mean,
I don't know what that was.
But yeah,
here we go. Taj again. He's automatic. Taj is automatic. Dude, I'm saying, jeez.
It was like a 10-point game.
Yeah.
A couple minutes ago, or not even like an 8-point game. Now it's up to 18. This is scary. Yeah. I mean, I think they're going to be up to like 90-some points.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the stats right now. Isaiah Mobley's got 20 and 12 rebounds. Evan Mobley's got 22 with 9 rebounds, 7 assists. Edie's got 18. Peterson's got 11. Like what more can you ask for? If they're gonna get that every game, like then they're gonna win March Madness. Like I don't know, they can beat anybody if they're gonna do that.
Actually, you say those stats now. Who asked the question? Mangoose Hijacker. You say those stats. Now, I don't think they have a weakness. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The Mobley brothers, 20 points, and then Tajidi, too, just quietly just destroying. I mean, I'm pretty sure Ethan Anderson has like a couple points, too. I mean, this is getting out of hand. 87 points per minute, 40 left. And look, let's see if they hit these 2 free throws. You think they do it?
Nope, of course not. So before that, they were 6 of... Yeah, so they're 6 of 9 from the line right now. So like I said, this isn't a good free throw shooting game. Like this, from a free throws perspective, this isn't like USC breaking from the norm here. So definitely still a weakness. But if you only shoot 9 of them, it can only hurt you so much. Let's see 6 for 10 on the game. That's not good. So that's definitely something that's like the thing that doesn't make sense to me about this team is they've got guys that can shoot threes. Like Drew Peterson is one of their best 3-point shooters, and you see him brick a pair from the free throw line. And it feels like so many guys do that. Why does that happen?
I don't know. It just doesn't make
sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Maybe they get nervous. I think Enfield for like just 2 days. I mean, they should have done this like, I don't know when, like maybe when their game was postponed. I don't know, they probably couldn't. But they need to go like 2 days. Everyone has said
strictly free throws. Yeah, strictly free throws.
I mean, it's like it's out of hand. It just hurts because this team is so complete on like other sides of the ball, and then you just go look at the free throw percentage and it's like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that that's the only thing that like this team has in certain aspects they've ebbed and flowed, like from 3-point shooting, from offensive rhythm in general, but free throw shooting like has pretty much been bad the whole season. So that's like the one thing that I feel like is separating this team from being a legitimate like national contender threat, should I say, because again, when you get to March Madness, you're playing close games. You can't go 60% from the free throw line. You're going to have to go at least, oh my goodness.
Oh my God, is that Reese Waters? Jeez.
I think that was Reese Waters. He's That guy's good. That guy's a bucket. Like that guy can play. Good. I remember seeing him in his first game when he was like, just recently announced eligible to play this year, and he like pulls up from 30 feet, and it's like, okay, that's also nice to have. Like you forget he's one of the top recruits this season. So
yeah, and I don't know if they're gonna reach 90 unless they hit a 3.
Yeah, but then also they're gonna have to hit a 3 here.
That'll be a perfect way to end it. But you talked about Reese Waters. I remember one of the games USC was blowing out the other team. I forgot what game, but they had Amar Ross come off the bench. Oh, Boubacar, geez. But he's great too. Boubacar is a great player. But yeah, Amar Ross, he's 5'9", and he came in and he drilled a step back 3. Like I thought I was watching James Harden. He was crazy. I mean, he rained it. And I think this is what I like about blowouts, because the players who don't usually play, they're working hard in practice, they're finally getting some time to get some reps, get some footage on ESPN too. And that's perfect. And Boubacar, nice dunk.
Yeah. Yeah, they just look like they're having so much fun right now. You saw Isaiah Mobley on the bench making some, I don't know what that face was, but he seemed pretty hyped about the Colabelli look. And it just seems like they're and that's one thing that I think Enfield has done such a good job with this team with, is that you were talking about this earlier. It's like your best player is a freshman, maybe your second best player is a sophomore, and then a bunch of redshirt senior, junior, grad transfers, and it's like this team looks so different this year as compared to last year. But it didn't really. I mean, early on in the season, I guess until the UConn loss, it was like they hadn't really gelled. But now, like they're really hitting their stride. And it feels like they've been playing together for 3 years based on just watching the game. So credit to Andy Enfield for that. I've been critical of him not getting, as much as they could get out of USC's talent in the past. And this is one of their most talented teams ever. And I don't know, they've been playing like one cohesive unit as you see the clock winding down on the 89-71 win. Would have been nice to get to 90, but I guess USC fans will take the 18-point victory. That was one of the quietest 89 points. Like the game didn't feel. 18 points. That's a blowout, and this game felt somewhat close for at least the first, like 1.5 halves, and then USC just pulled away. So, but that's like one of the things that we want to see from this team, is that we talk so much about the scoring droughts and the inconsistency on the offensive side. These crazy scoring runs, and if they're going to do that and they're going to play the defense that they've been playing, even with occasional games like this where you allow 71 points, you're going to win a lot of basketball games.
Yep, basically, yeah. You just saw it right there. If their defense, the question really was can their offense catch up to the defense? And it's obviously not going to catch up. The defense is one of the 4 best in the country, which is just ridiculous. But you put up 89 points, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts? What are your main takeaways from this game? What does USC have to do going forward?
I was really impressed by just their offense, the way they got everyone involved. I think this is a perfect game, like I said earlier, for Isaiah Mobley to get more involved and get more comfortable. And I think the next couple games you go against like Arizona, then Stanford, and then on the road against Colorado next week. Those 2 games are going to be huge against Stanford and Colorado. So get some momentum going right now and build upon it against Arizona, then go to Stanford and Colorado, huge games they have to win. So I think that was the main takeaway, just Isaiah Mobley being Isaiah Mobley and balling out.
Yes or no, does USC win the Pac-12 regular season title?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I think UCLA is just falling off right now.
Yeah, UCLA is certainly not playing its best basketball. It seems like to me it's a 3-team race between USC, UCLA, and Oregon. Everybody else has at least 5 losses, I think. And Oregon, it looks like they're only going to play like 15 or 16 games. I know they're going to try to reschedule a lot of those, including their one against USC, but they were out for so long they had so many games canceled that they're probably not going to play the full 19, 20 game slate. But yeah, I think it's probably going to come down to USC, UCLA on March 6th at Pauley Pavilion. And, if USC wins that, they pretty much win. And even if they lose that game, like the way the standings are shaping out right now, they still have a pretty decent chance to win the Pac-12 title. And remarkable. If you had told me a couple of years ago that I would see during my college experience, I would see the USC basketball team win a Pac-12 championship before the USC football team. I would not have believed it. But
yeah,
seems like that. Yeah. But it seems like that might be what happens this season. Of course, there's still a long way to go. And of course, we will be keeping you fresh with all of the USC basketball takes, analysis, and takes and analysis, breakdowns, all that fun stuff. Thank you so much for tuning in to the first ever live watch party on Trojan Dash. I had a lot of fun. Hope you guys did too. Thank you for being active in the chat. Thank you for tuning in. Anthony, thank you as always for joining me on the show. To everybody listening, as always, remember to follow us on all of our various social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Find all of our work at dashsports.tv. Check out some of our exclusive columnists with Sports Pac-12. Anthony's got a column Sports Pac-12. Check out his awesome work. And make sure to stay tuned with Trojan Dash and all our other shows every single week. Thank you, Annie, so much. We appreciate the kind words. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been awesome. Thank you once again, Trojan Dash.